So this is a review for The Merry Old Soul, released in 1935. It's the 110th in the series and it's directed by Friz Freleng. There is a restoration out there. It hasn't been made available on physical media yet at the time of this recording, and unfortunately the restoration does zoom in on the picture a little bit. I don't know why they did that. It is a blue ribbon reissue, although the original titles are known to exist, and I've simply Frankensteined it onto my copy because I figure why not. Oh, and side note, this is one of those rare times where I would advocate doing photoshopping to fix up the titles, because if this is the only known copy, at least we have the soundtrack, we know what it's supposed to look like, so we can always do some wizardry to make it look as though the original titles were found. Just make sure you get someone competent, right? It is under copyright, so I can't show you the full short here on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it. But in case you haven't seen this one, not really much happens. You have old King Cole in what I'm assuming is like a fairy tale type land. He marries a woman, but this woman, she has lots of children. And when I go through this short, I'll just go through some of the really weird questions I have for it. Yes, it's going to be another case of me overthinking things, I know, but it's a weird one for sure. So what we're going to do is go through the short itself. I'll go through some trivia as I always do, but because it's a Merry Melodies short, my good friend Manny, Cruz, the Toon tenor, will go through the music in this one, and then there's really not that much to discuss about the music for this one. Probably the weirdest thing is that Merry Melodies around this time were made to promote a song that would be in a Warner Brothers film, like the Gold Diggers of 33 and so on. Films like that, right? But this one, this is an original recording, and that's pretty much it of The Merry Old Soul. It's quite possible that the song might have been intended for a movie, but then got scrapped for whatever reason, and then this cartoon's too far along, so you have Leon Schlesinger saying, well, I don't want to lose the money I put into this short, so I may as well finish it and release it. It's a detail that's probably lost to time, but yeah, this is a little bit unusual in that it doesn't really promote a song per se. But Manny will go through the music in further detail regardless. And as you watch the short, it definitely reminds me of a short called Baby Bottleneck by Bob Clampett that was released much later. And, you know, comparing the two, it's kind of an apples and oranges situation. They're both from different decades, different sensibilities with the directors and so on. I think they're both great shorts in their own special way. I do prefer Baby Bottleneck, but I like both. It's fine. Now, voice actors. This comes from my good friend Keith Scott's wonderful Cartoon Voices book, and he's done so much research on these voices. And yeah, this book is amazing. If you haven't got it yet, definitely pick it up. And I have a link below to purchase that book. But you have the Rhythmettes doing the girl singers and the baby talk that you hear all throughout. The Varsity Three do those three fiddlers that you see. Bernice Hansel, she does the voice of the wife, and she usually does a lot of the very high-pitched, squeaky type voices, and she also does some baby giggles, apparently. The King's Lullaby singing is done by a person named Alan Watson. So, there you are. And one other thing before we go through the short itself, you'll notice that this theme may look a bit familiar. And if you're a fan of the earlier Silly Symphony shorts that the Disney Studio did, honestly, if you saw this short without the opening titles, you would probably think it might be one of those Silly Symphony shorts, and it's really not that surprising. Friz Freleng has admitted as much. Him and various crew members would routinely watch the Disney films, and they would get kind of depressed because they can't seem to make anything that would match that quality. And yes, I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but that was essentially what he said. And it's really only once Tex Avery arrives at the studio, and then when Frank Tasha returns, that's when the studio finds its own identity and makes their own type of shorts that they are well known for. But yeah, this type of story was done all the time, and a lot of it could also just be that a lot of the stories were also in the public domain, so authors don't have to get paid. That's why you'll see this sort of thing as opposed to an adaptation of a then known popular series, like maybe from a pulp magazine or maybe a recent children's book or something along those lines. And right away as we open up, I love the whole storybook aspect of it, especially when you see the original titles as poor condition as they are. And the silhouette of the church that you see here, it's a nice little touch. Even if you don't think much of this short, it's nice to see some of those added touches there. And you can also see in this restoration I'm using that there's that dreaded zooming effect, which I don't know why they did that, but anyway. And we see our main three singers, I guess the fiddlers three they're supposed to be. And it's an interesting play on size, which once again, it's all cropped. If you see the original version, they're framed more properly. But anyway, I'm not going to mention that anymore. I'm sure you get the point. But me overthinking this is like, well, I don't know how they get these different violin sounds from this one big violin. I don't know. It's a crazy little device, isn't it? And yes, I'll use a Simpsons reference here. I hope somebody got fired for that blunder. But, you know, it's a silly gag. I wonder if Clamp had thought of that. It's kind of his thing, but who knows? And as we see the song being sung, I also like the added touch where at one point the three fiddlers, they move in unison, which again doesn't make any sense in context of the music that's coming out, but it's a nice bit of animation. And we also see the other nursery rhyme fairy tale characters, which Frizz already touched upon this, not just in the recent short Beauty and the Beast, but even before that in Harmonizing days, like there was literally a short called The Dish Ran Away with the Spoon. As I mentioned before, it's a theme that is quite common in shorts of this time period, not just at Disney, not just at Warner Brothers, but pretty much everywhere. While Manny will go through the song itself, I personally think it's a nice little song, and it also sets up the story quite well. We find out that old King Cole is going to marry the woman in the shoe. It's definitely interesting if you know the fairy tales about the old woman who lived in the shoe, as old King Cole is going to find out very soon. But we see this nice little wedding scene where they're walking along, everyone's happy for him, and they board their little carriage. But there's one weird gag here where you see everyone throwing the shoes at the king. It's kind of a weird one, but I'm assuming that's just a reference to the fact that he's marrying a woman who lives in the shoe, and he even ends up keeping a pair, which, yeah, it's quite weird, but anyway. Oh, and a no prize to the person that ends up identifying each and every one of those fairy tale or nursery rhyme characters you see in the back. I mean, you recognize Puss in Boots, I think there's little boy Blue there with the horn, little Bo Peep, but yeah, if someone wants to describe every single one, go for it. Because it's rather crudely drawn, some of them might not be particularly obvious, but I've always liked seeing some of the weirdness of Frizz Freeling's backgrounds around this time, because some of it can be quite crude, and this is no exception. And in another gag, which, again, I just get the feeling it came from Clampett, but again, that's a bit of info that's perhaps lost to time, but this carriage that has a horse, but it's modeled after a 1930s luxury car, like maybe a Rolls Royce or something along those lines. It's a cute idea. I quite like it. So they end up going to her literal shoe as per the fairy tale. You do have to wonder though, he's a king. Why not just move to his place? Because I'm assuming he has a castle. Again, I'm overthinking it, I know. But that was my first thought when I saw this cartoon for the first time actually a few years back when I did a commentary track for it. But he's going to definitely get the surprise of his life because she has definitely been busy all these years. I mean, she's an older lady, but yeah, he will definitely see why in just a moment. And in a very funny bit, and this just shows that Freeling, even though Tex Avery hadn't arrived on the scene and he wasn't quite as influenced there yet, there's still some hilarious moments, and this is definitely one of those times. So we see the babies appear, and each and every one are like, "Daddy, Daddy," and how many kids does she have? As I said, she's certainly been busy, but it's very creative seeing all these babies pop up at all these spots, including out of a drawer, how there's so many of them just in there, and even looks like he tries to escape. He probably thought that door was to leave the home, but sorry buddy, you're married now, tough luck, the kids are yours now. Have fun. And in probably my favorite bit of the short, and it just shows the new sensibilities that's slowly creeping into the studio, again, as Tex Avery makes his way over. I mean, who knows? Maybe while Avery was working on his first short, which would be released later on 1935, maybe he was giving ideas at this point, I don't know. But I love this scene. So you've got the Fiddlers 3 narrating once again, saying that old King Cole has bitten off more than he could chew. And if this was a regular Merry Melodies short, they would be singing all throughout the short, right? But no, they sing a verse, old King Cole's not happy, he can clearly hear them narrating this awful part of his now life, and he just shuts the window on him, and that's it. And the rest of the short can now begin.
Old King Cole was a merry old soul till he married the woman in the shoe. Old King Cole is a sorry soul, he bit off more than he can chew. And now he's got his hands full, when night comes on he's thankful. Old King Cole was a merry old soul till he married the woman woman in the shoe.
It's definitely an underrated moment from this point in Looney Tunes history. In any case, another bit of me overthinking this is, where is the old woman? Because you don't see her for the rest of the short. The rest of the short is basically old King Cole and how he manages to look after all these kids, and that's it. Thankfully, it is actually quite an interesting watch, and not all the gags are ha-ha, laugh out loud funny or anything, but a lot of it's actually very creative, and it makes for this short to be one of the more underrated shorts of 1935 and in early Looney Tunes history. But you'd have to wonder, where is she? Why is he stuck looking after it? And he's a king. Why doesn't he get some of his servants? I don't know, guys. But anyway, I'm sure you get the point. But first up, it's bath time. So they go through this conveyor belt system where it's similar to a car wash. Again, it's very creative what they do here, and it certainly says a lot about old King Cole and how creative he is to actually create all of this. But not everything is completely automated, as he has to run some of these machines himself, case in point, when it comes to actually drying the children. Plus, he needs to apply the talcum powder, but there's a nice little touch there I didn't really notice before, but there is like a piece of wood or whatever it is that actually flips the baby over so that he can add more powder. It's a little things like that make this quite an interesting watch. And what's clearly a very safe thing to do, he then ties up balloons to each and every child to bring them over to a different conveyor belt in order to use paper towels as like a nappy or diaper, as you guys say in America. There's nothing ha-ha about this particular bit. It's more admirable for its creativity, if anything. And I like some of the animation of the babies as they're floating through. Despite the fact we're not going to hear those Fiddlers 3 anymore, you still hear the instrumental version of the title track all throughout this particular scene. So we see the babies on the conveyor belt in, again, this is not ha-ha funny, this is a very cute thing where they're going through and they're being put into their pajamas and they end up going into their bed. And we first see Winkum, Blinkum, and Nod, and those are the names of a particular fairy tale or nursery rhyme. And Walt Disney made an adaptation of the Winkum, Blinkum, and Nod story. That's quite a charming one to watch if you haven't seen that one. But imagine being the child named And. It's like, hi And, bye And. It's kind of a weird one. I don't know if they thought that joke entirely through, but anyway, I thought that was pretty amusing. So old King Cole is really tired, and that's a sign that perhaps he should lose a little bit of weight, but anyway, that's another thing entirely. So he sings a lullaby and tries to do the sewing while rocking all the babies to sleep, as we see Eeny, Meeny, Mo, which is the whole counting thing, Eeny, Meeny, Money, Mo, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And this bit is definitely relatable as a dad. You're rocking them to sleep, you put them down, you step away, and then boom, they just start crying again. And there is one moment, if you freeze frame it, and this is just something I found by accident, but it's quite clear that there was meant to be something extra in the background where the sewing machine is, like a needle or some kind. So the animator has allowed for that, but that doesn't show through here. It's just an interesting detail that, like I said, I happened to stumble upon. So as expected, he tries to creep away, the babies wake up, start crying, so he rocks them to sleep once again, and in the second attempt, he manages to get back to his couch. And we see babies nip tuck, which I'm sure you all know what that means, right, when it comes to tucking someone in bed. So old King Cole ends up collapsing on the couch, two of the babies get up, they sneak over, they get on the sewing machine, they all end up on the couch and they just start crying, and old King Cole starts crying as well. And that ending is very, very similar to the later masterpiece, Goodnight Elmo, that Chuck Jones would do. So I'm wondering if he just reused that idea from this short. I don't know, but in any case, we end right there. Now, I've been prattling on long enough, so my good friend Manny Cruz, the Toony Tenor, will go through the musical references in this short. So, take it away, Manny.
Hi, everyone. This is Manny Cruz, the Toony Tenor, coming at you with the latest edition of It's Time for Manny's Music Time with music trivia for you today. Bum! For the 1935 Merry Melody cartoon, The Merry Old Soul, directed by Friz Freleng with musical direction by Norman Spencer. So, it's nice to see this one again in a restoration that's a lot better than the version that I saw years ago. So, it's always nice to revisit these old Merry Melodies and get a new perspective, both visually as well as musically. So let's jump right on in, because there's not a lot to talk about when it comes about the music itself. So the cartoon obviously starts off with the Merry Melodies theme of this time period, I Think You're Ducky, and it transitions into Old King Cole Was a Merry Old Soul.
Old King Cole, oh, he doesn't know a soul, but who knows what married life will do. But now we're going to celebrate this glorious event.
Now, the version that we are familiar with is a Blue Ribbon release, and sadly it cuts a little bit of the opening title track. But the original title sequence for this cartoon does exist, albeit in a very, very rough copy. I think it came from an old 16mm film print. It's available on YouTube, so you can get a little gist of how it starts. So you see like the storybook opening, and then it transitions into the version that we're all familiar with, because the current restoration, it's the Blue Ribbon version that Warner Brothers used to do the restoration. So the title track is an original piece. There is no other recording of it, because I'm so used to hearing these songs and hearing them from a Warner Brothers feature or a Broadway show. But no, this one is strictly original to the cartoon itself. Now, according to the cue sheet, it originally said that the songwriters were unknown, but I did a little digging around on the internet, and the songwriters for this cartoon were Nat Simon, Charles McCarthy, and Harry Edelheit. So here's a little bit of information about these songwriters. So the most prominent one of the three is Nat Simon. So this information comes from Wikipedia, and I quote, Nat Simon, born August 6, 1900, and he died September 5th, 1979, was an American composer, pianist, bandleader, and songwriter. He was born in Newburgh, New York, and from the 30s to the 50s, his songs were used in over 20 films, unquote. His most famous pieces are Ponciana, Song of the Tree, which he co-wrote in the 30s, and Istanbul, not Constantinople, with the lyricist Jimmy Kennedy in 1953. The song was originally recorded in 1953 by a Canadian vocal group called the Four Lads. But when I saw the name of that song, my mind went instantly to the 90s, when I was a kid, of course, to Tiny Toon Adventures. So there's a very famous episode of Tiny Toon Adventures called Tiny Toon Music Television, and they used this song that was written by Nat Simon, obviously not the Merry Old Soul, but Istanbul, Istanbul, not Constantinople, now it's Istanbul. The version that was recorded by They Might Be Giants in 1990. So that was one of my favorite episodes of Tiny Toon Adventures growing up, and as we all know, Tiny Toon Adventures is a spiritual continuation of the original Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. And man, I love that song. I love that sequence with Plucky Duck and Hampton and Myra and Montana Max. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. And of course, another song from They Might Be Giants, Particle Man. Oh, I just love those two songs, and I want to thank Tiny Toons for teaching that. So it's a nice little connection to, I had no idea what was the name of the guy who wrote that song, and I also didn't know that that song was originally written in the 50s. So that was kind of neat. Now, the second songwriter, Charles McCarthy, I hit a dead end. I kept seeing information about his birth year and when he was dead, but it was being confused with another songwriter called Joseph McCarthy. Not Joseph McCarthy, the guy responsible for, the Red Scare in the 1950s. No, we're not talking about that Joseph McCarthy. So yeah, Charles McCarthy, I couldn't find anything. If anybody has more information about him, please let me know in the comments. Now, the third songwriter is Harry Edelheit, and the very brief information I got from ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. He was born Harry Edelheit. He was born in Vienna, Austria, May 3rd, 1891, and he died in New York City, October 28th, 1955. So that's pretty much all she wrote for the title track itself, which you hear several times throughout the cartoon. In the beginning when it's sung by the various characters, and then you hear little snippets of it played by the orchestra throughout the cartoon. Now, when Old King Cole, I want to say Bold King Cole for some reason. I'm thinking of I think it was 1936 Van Buren cartoon with Felix the Cat, Bold King Cole. I'm Old King Cole. I'm not afraid of anything. That was found in every public domain compilation tape growing up. And of course, how appropriate for me. You talk too much, you talk too much, you never shut up, you talk too much. I love that song. Nice little cartoon. Sadly, the studio went debunked in 1936. But anyway. That's for Anthony's Van Buren talk, which will be coming soon. I don't know. Just ask him. He'll do it. So when you see Old King Cole, not Bold King Cole, wrong studio, getting married to the woman in the shoe, you hear a little bit of the Bridal chorus. The Bridal Chorus written by the famous German composer Richard Wagner. No, his name looks like Richard Wagner, but it is not pronounced that way. It's Richard Wagner. So originally, the Bridal Chorus comes from the opera Lohengrin, which was first performed in 1850, and you hear it in the third act of the opera, and it became popular with weddings outside of the opera in 1858, when it was used as a processional for the wedding of Victoria, Princess Royal, to Prince Frederick William of Prussia. And now you can't go anywhere without a wedding hearing the Bridal Chorus, also known as Here Comes a Bride, all dressed in white. The original lyrics are in German. And I think I did a wedding years ago. I think it was one of my friend who's an amazing musician himself. If you're listening to this, Patricio, hi. I sang the Bridal Chorus in his wedding, and I believe we did it in German. We actually did the version from the opera. So that was kind of neat. So, yeah, Richard Wagner. We're going to hear a lot of his stuff in the future in Warner Brothers cartoons. There's a particular one that I'm waiting to get to. I don't know. Maybe you've heard about it, Spear and Magic Helmet, Kill the Wabbit. I don't know. If you don't know what it is, I don't blame you. It's super obscure, but I'll talk more about Wagner when I get to that particular cartoon. Something about opera, whatever. Anyway, I digress. So the next tune that you hear is Easter Bunnies, and I'm recording this a few weeks before Christmas, so wrong holiday. But yes, the song's called Easter Bunnies, and it was written by Newell Chase and Edward Heyman, no relation to Paul Heyman. Haha, a wrestling reference in this commentary. Nah. So, you hear that in the scene when King Cole is cleaning all the babies in a little conveyor belt with like the laundry machine and the paper towels. And I'm like, man, those paper towels are super absorbent. They make Bounty look like it's nothing. And I thought that was a cool little scene, seeing the ingenuity of like the little Rube Goldberg-esque machines. And or not so much that, but like this whole conveyor belt. And I like how when the babies get tied to the balloon and they float over to the other table. I thought that was cute. Now, a little bit about the songwriters, very little that I could find. So Newell Chase, he was born February 3rd, 1904, and I need to rest. I want to go to bed. West Roxbury, Massachusetts, and he died January 26th. 1955 in New York City, and he was an organist, pianist, and a songwriter. And for Edward Heyman, little information for him. He was born March 14th, 1907 in New York City, and he died October 16th, 1981 in Jalisco, Mexico. He was a lyricist, not so much a composer, but he was a lyricist and a producer. And When I Fall in Love and For Sentimental Reasons are the two songs that he's most famous for. I always think when I fall in love, I'm thinking of the beautiful, beautiful rendition that was sung by Nat King Cole from the 50s. Go check that out. And For Sentimental Reasons, I always think of the Warner Brothers cartoon, the Pepe Le Pew cartoon from 1949, For Sentimental Reasons, which won an Academy Award for the studio. That was the second win after 1947's Tweety Pie, which was directed by Friz Freleng. And the final cue that we have in this cartoon is a well-known song. It's Rockabye Baby. And old King Cole sings it when I like it when he has the babies hooked up to their little cradles and they're connected to a sewing machine. Kind of reminds me of like the old Singer sewing machines where my hometown, Elizabeth, New Jersey, used to have a huge factory for Singer sewing machines. And I think they closed it, I believe, in the 70s or 80s. If I'm not mistaken, the building still exists. It has different companies in there now. And my mom, actually, she told me that she used to work inside that building just before I was born, sometime in the early to mid 80s. So yeah, cool little, sewing history. This is now going to be Anthony's sewing machine talk. So he's going to be like, wow, I got a lot of work on my plate. Now, Rockabye Baby, we all heard this song at one point of our lives, either us having the song sung to us or others singing it to, their children, their younger relatives. I mean, I see this cartoon, I see all the fun and stress that King Cole goes through. I mean, I'm not a father myself. I don't have any children. I have a nephew, but he's an adult now. But I do remember, when he was little, he was a good kid, still a good young man now. But the stress of dealing with a bunch of kids, I have experience working in education, and yeah, makes you want to cry sometimes. So Rockabye Baby is a nursery rhyme, and it's a lullaby. it has various ideas to the history of it. Now, the poem itself, Rockabye Baby on the treetop, when the wind blows, a cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, a cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. Various Warner Brothers cartoons have used it. I'm thinking the first one that comes to my head is The Wabbit Came to Supper. Swing it, fat stuff, when Elmer's holding Bugs and he's rocking him about. Now, the rhyme was said to have been published in a book called Mother Goose's Melody, which was published in London in 1765. And some people have credited a young woman, an actress by the name of Ellie Canning, that she apparently wrote the melody of Rockabye Baby, even though the words existed prior to when she was born. So there's conflicting stories about it, and I don't want to get too much into detail because I want to keep this commentary short and sweet, but a little bit about her. She was born March 4th, 1856, and died January 7th, 1940, and she's given credit for being the person that put the melody and the words together. But again, I was reading a little bit of an article from the Library of Congress about the history of the song, and I'm not going to bore you all with the details. You can go find that yourself. So, keeping it short and sweet. It was good to revisit this cartoon. It was cute, fun, restoration's nice. It's too bad we don't have the opening titles, but you can't win them all. So these are my thoughts for The Merry Old Soul. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting Anthony. Thanks for supporting me. And speaking of supporting, you can follow me on social media at the Toony Tenor, TheTooneyTenor, for my updates and life as a multifaceted geek, as well as a musician. And especially during this time of year, during Christmas, I'm going to be singing a lot of times in the next this whole week coming up. I'm like singing every single night for this concert, for this church service, for this, that, boom, 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 boom. But hey, I love it. Hey, I love working with Anthony, and I love having you guys listen to this commentary. So have a great day, great night, get some sleep. Hopefully you don't have hundreds of kids screaming and yelling at you to change their diapers and feed them. Oh, by the way, Old King Cole, he definitely gives me Oliver Hardy and Paul Whiteman vibes. Just wanted to throw that out there. Cool mustache. Thanks for listening, folks. See you later. Bye.
Thank you, Manny. Now, one of the interesting things about this short, as I've already alluded to earlier, is how it has some bits in there that are hints of what the Looney Tunes series will become. Clearly, this is sort of like a silly symphony type short that Disney were doing, but it also has the other smart-assed humor that would end up taking over the Looney Tunes and make those shorts what they are. Again, I'm wondering if Tex Avery's arrival, did he have any say in some of the gags in this? He might have hinted what things could have been done. I don't know. Just because Avery arrived doesn't mean everything changed instantly. There was definitely a gradual change in other ways as well. It was just that when Tex Avery arrived, things were turned up to 11, so to speak. There's my Spinal Tap reference. Wonderful movie, I love that one. Thankfully, this short is also funny. It starts off as your typical merry melody of the period. You've got your song that's being promoted, even though there's nothing really to promote this time round, but anyway. And you think it's going to be similar to Beauty and the Beast and the earlier stuff that Cruz had done, but once we see the surprise of the short, then it gets very, very creative. Again, it's not really ha-ha funny, it's just interesting to watch. I know I'm mentioning it again, I just wish they could fix up this restoration to make it look better without zooming in. Is this going to be a go too short? Perhaps not, but it is one of those underrated little gems of 1935 and of early Friz Freelings in general. This one gets a 7.5 out of 10. I quite like this one, it's not bad at all. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.